Hey everyone, welcome back. So, if you've been through divorce, which you either are going through or are contemplating if you're listening to this podcast, right? Um, or if you are in the thick of it, you already know that one of the hardest parts isn't just signing the papers, it's learning how to communicate with your ex. This is probably somebody that you have a lot of emotional heat with, whether it's toxic or just annoying or whatever. Um, Communication is probably among the reasons that you're not with this person anymore, and yet you have to keep doing it. So, if you share kids, unfortunately, communication doesn't just end when the relationship does. You have to find a way to keep talking to this person calmly, hopefully, clearly, hopefully, and with accountability, which is easier said than done. So that's why I'm excited about today's guests, Tessa Noel and Heather Ruiz from Talking Parents. Talking Parents is a platform you probably have heard of. It is designed to help co parents communicate more effectively and safely, especially when things get tense. So, Tessa is a certified divorce transition and recovery coach and a co parent herself. She has been through all of the high conflict highs and lows. Heather is the marketing director at Talking Parents with over 20 years of experience in communications and leadership. They're both co parents, and both of them are deeply passionate about helping families navigate co parenting with less conflict and more peace. Welcome, both.
Thank you so much
Thank
for having us.
you.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Tessa, I want to start with you. So, you, as I said, have got both the personal and professional lens on this. You are living co parenting. You had a very high conflict relationship. It is now in a much better place
It really is.
because,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so, what inspired you to get into this work and then ultimately partner with Talking Parents?
Um, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking. Honestly, I became the coach that I wish I had had when I was going through my incredibly high conflict divorce 8 years ago. Um, I was just, no one hands you a manual
No,
and they
they sure
say,
don't.
hey, you're not going through a typical divorce. You're going through a
Yeah.
high conflict divorce, and here's what to do and what not to do. So I needed more hand holding. I needed someone to tell me what to expect. There were just crazy amount of unreasonable things that I had to do while also being a mother of a 10-month-old and a 2-year-old when I was going through my divorce, right?
Yeah.
So like preparing for a 7-hour deposition as a breastfeeding mother. Who would think that I would have to prepare
Yeah.
myself for that, or being on the witness stand, or defending myself against false allegations of parental alienation. So just some very serious, very high conflict things. And I had a therapist. I had an attorney. My therapist had never been through the things that I was going through, right? My
Exactly.
attorney didn't hold my hand at all. And if I
That's right.
needed
It's not
someone to
their
help,
job. Yeah.
no, it's not their job. And it would have cost me $350 an hour.
Exactly.
um, so yeah, I needed someone to hold my hand to tell me, here's what to expect. Here's the type of person you're dealing with. And here's what's most likely going to come next. So I
Mhm.
ultimately became that person.
That's right.
And that's what gave me the passion to work for other moms. Not only that, the most important thing to me was shielding my children from the conflict of our high conflict divorce. And I'm
Yeah.
a recovering people pleaser. I tend to put myself last. When I'll make my kids dinner, put the dinner plates down on the table and go, whoops, I forgot to make myself a plate.
Oopsie. Yeah.
So at first, I was just focused on the children, right? But in doing that, I learned so many things that no one tells you, things that I was unintentionally doing that weren't right. And then also ways to just help navigate through this process. I think one of the most impactful um, tools that I saw or that I found when I was doing my doom scrolling research one night was it was a TEDx talk by UCSB professor Tamara Afifi, and the talk is called "The Impact of Divorce on Children."
Mm.
And this professor studied cortisol levels in children's spit
Mm-hmm.
to be able to find out how stressed out they are when their parents are going through divorce. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, what she found was it's not the divorce itself
Oh.
that has the biggest negative impact on children, it is the parents' conflict. And that was an aha moment for me. That was a game changer for me. And that's what helped shift my focus into protecting the children from conflict moving forward. And that's where I found all these tools and resources that now I share with my students and clients. So,
Yep.
long
Yep.
story short,
Yeah.
my own
No.
my own journey has led me
Your
to this
own.
point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, right? All of our hard-won battles are the things that will lead us to the work that we do. I mean, same for me. So, um, I love uh, I love that that was your journey because it's something that is so needed for so many women. It's exactly how I got into the work that I've been doing because I got divorced 16 years ago. Nobody was talking about this shit. There were no
No,
podcasts. There was no
right.
Instagram, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what was happening to me. There were no names for what was happening to me,
Right, right.
right? So, I love that. Heather, you come from a different professional background. You've got communications, marketing, and tech. You're also a co-parent, though. So, what drew you to this work around co-parent, sort of blending these two, co-parenting and communication?
Yeah, so when I initially separated from my children's father, it was about 15 years ago. And so again, very much to Tessa's sentiment and to yours, Kate, there wasn't a whole lot of this around, and divorce was still this taboo, broken home, kind of conversation that was going on, and it was almost alienating, I think.
Mhm.
And for many of us, I think as we went through the journey and recovered from it and all of that, we realized it actually was the best thing we could have done for ourselves and our children at the time. And
Yep.
so being open and being able to share that story and to be able to talk to people very frankly about divorce. We all talk about needing to hydrate more. We all talk about what we should be eating and working out and all of those things. And nobody looks at that as a bad thing. And there are apps out there that help people keep track and do all of those things. And so, being a co parent myself, coming from a divorce that was amicable at the beginning, and then as I met someone new a few years later, got engaged, got married, that changed dramatically. And it
Oh,
was really
interesting.
difficult to all of a sudden go from this partnership working together to almost this end fighting and this kind of one-upping relationship that we got into. And it was very much, born out of a fear of my children's father losing his place in their lives. And I became, the bad person in all of that. And so when I got the opportunity to join the Talking Parents team, I really wanted to make sure that we weren't just bringing a tool and an app to people to say, here you go, subscribe or join the platform. And, you have records and everything's recorded and transcribed. But I wanted to make sure that we were also providing the help and the resources that were needed that I didn't have and that I didn't know that were available to me. So, in addition to providing the tools, we also bring in expert advice and we work with professionals across a lot of different fields to ensure that our co-parents, whether you're a user or not, you have the support and the access to the tools, to the resources, the questions to ask, and
Mm,
all of those things to where you don't have to go in and do the search yourself or kind of fumble through it. There's a place where you can go. And it's
mm,
so amazing now to see that there are so many support tools and resources and people out there that are willing to have these conversations. And so here at Talking Parents, I wanted to bring that all together and build a community for professionals as well as co-parents to come together and be able to work through this and learn the best way to handle their situation.
mm. I love that. Yeah, that's everything that we need, right? All of the tools, not
Mhm.
just the platform, but the
Mhm.
information, the like the stories, the expert guidance, right? Like Tessa said, when we're in this, we have a therapist who really doesn't have any expertise in this, no training in this usually. And then you've got an attorney who, is going to cost a fortune and is the most unqualified and most expensive therapist you're ever going to talk to. They don't care. They don't care about how you're feeling about it, right? Like that's not their job. And so to have the resources and the tools and the information that people need at this juncture is, I feel like only when you're on the other side can you like really hone in on like,
Mhm.
okay, this is what we need. This is what I wish I had. This is what we really need to know and understand. So I love that. Um, Tessa, you work with people on every stage of this process. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see when people first start co-parenting with a difficult or high conflict ex?
Um, I would say one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is they're not managing their expectations well.
Mm,
They're still bringing these expectations that they had while they were in that relationship, right?
Mhm.
And
yes.
so
Hmm.
I remember one of the first clients I ever worked with, she was very frustrated at her co-parent because he was lying to her about who he was dating. And it was interesting to me because I could see that, like, what do
Hmm.
you mean? Like, why are you interested in what who your care parent co-parent is dating, and how does that affect, your dynamic, just your business like relationship that you're supposed to be having together, with this
Yep.
child? But then I really could understand. Well, I kind of had to gently remind her that during the time that she was married to him, he was lying to
He
her.
was also a
And
liar.
she,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
I was like, are you suddenly expecting him to change as a person now that you're divorced? Right?
Right.
You're going to
Right.
expect him to show up as a completely different person?
If he
Or
lied
are
to
they going
you
to?
when he was your husband, he has zero reason to not continue lying when he's your
Right.
ex-husband. Exactly.
Right. And she
And
was kind,
also,
yeah,
and also, right, like he doesn't have to tell her
it
who
doesn't
he's
matter.
dating.
It doesn't matter anymore. Yes. And so, yeah, it was two things. She was expecting him to be a different person after the marriage, but then she was also expecting him to let her know who he was
Mm-hmm.
dating, right? These expectations that they probably had in the marriage. And we really have to be willing to let these things go,
Yeah.
right? These things that existed in the marriage, the roles, the dynamics that existed in the marriage. We have to be able to let that completely go, even though it's part of our identity. It's part of what
Mhm.
made us who we were in that during that time. And it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard because
Yep.
maybe you were the primary caregiver. Maybe you were the parent that was, taking the child to their doctor's appointments and their, everything. Um, this dynamic completely has to shift, not just your communication with your co-parent, but parenting roles. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard because that's who you were. That
Yeah.
and
Right.
you're going through an identity crisis, and you have to be willing to let those things go, and do it in a way that is focusing forward on the children, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a business like professional relationship moving forward. And we're not going to talk about who we're dating. We're not going to have the same cyclical arguments. We're not going to have the same expectations that existed um, in the toxic relationship. We're leaving all of that behind and we're moving forward with managed expectations. They were a liar. That's why
Yep.
you divorced them.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
so
It's
yeah,
the
mismanaged expectations
I
is the biggest mistake I see.
yeah, I agree. And the way that I sort of frame it with my clients is that like you're doing all the work to get legally divorced and physically divorced and financially divorced, and the last thing to go is the emotional
Mm-hmm.
divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we get something out of that connect. Sometimes it's the negative intimacy, right? It's like the only thing that we have left, is the only connection we have left is the way that we fight about these things.
Right.
Or we just, we still love them, or whatever it is, right? It's the hardest thing because it's not concrete, it's not definitive. It's that emotional entanglement that you've been entangled with this person maybe for 20, 25 years, 30 years. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, right?
Right.
I think Heather, what you were talking about with your ex-husband was that thing, exactly what we're talking about, right? Like he was still emotionally attached to you in a certain way that when you have brought someone else
Hmm.
in, and maybe it was about the kids, but also I'll bet it was also, about you, right? That he was sort of somehow being usurped. So, yeah, absolutely. Um, so Heather, you see how people actually use the platform. So what are some communication patterns that might lead to better outcomes for kids that you see?
So one of the biggest things, and this is where again we work with a lot of professionals, and whether we're bringing them in on our social media pages, hosting webinars. Tessa does a high conflict workshop that's over 2 days where she works with a small group of people on their specific issues. But again, like you said, it all comes down to the communication. And I love where Tessa talks about really trying to keep things business-like. Sometimes things don't need a response, and sometimes things aren't up for discussion. And so, one of the biggest things that we try to push is that at the end of the day, co parenting is about your children. So, everything needs to be child focused, child centric, and all communications really need to be focused on that. Anything outside of that really, should be a boundary, should be a line that's drawn, hey, this doesn't have to do with our child. Can we please get back onto whatever the subject was that you were thinking? And one of the things about the platform that we really try to push is that business like, is that separation, if you will. And so there's a lot of things that you can do there that don't cause you to have to pick up the phone and make a phone call or even have a conversation about it. If you're trying to schedule something, if you're trying to reimburse for a payment or ask for money, or you need the insurance information because we're all going through our insurance renewals this year, all of that information and those types of actions can be done within the app to kind of keep cutting away from the need to communicate or have a conversation about those things. So I can just
Hmm.
put a calendar event on the calendar, they accept it or they decline it and tell me why. And, you go from there. Or if I need a payment, reimbursement, then I can just send you a request for that. And it doesn't have to be a big, long, drawn out conversation. It's
Hmm.
very kind of cut and dry. And so
Yeah.
that's what we really want to help is empower parents to understand that they don't have to always engage. They can engage when they're ready to engage.
Yeah.
And then also that compartmentalization of keeping all of that together in one place so that maybe you're not in a good mood and your reaction to something isn't going to be appropriate. So you're going to take a, few minutes to draft a message or to figure out a way to respond instead of just kind of off the cuff. So it helps really delineate, compartmentalize, put everything in a box so that you can establish when you're ready to communicate how you're going to react, how you're going to talk, how you're going to go back and forth with your co-parent with the various things that we do. And
Hmm.
so again, we work with a lot of professionals, whether it's depending upon your situation, gray rock method, yellow rock method, or utilization of high conflict BIF method that's out there. There's so many different opportunities for co-parents to learn a different way that works best for them,
Yeah.
to be able to communicate as opposed to react, maybe to what your co-parent is saying or doing.
Hmm.
The other thing too that we find, of course, when things are recorded, everybody tends to mind their P's and Q's a little bit more, on that as well. And so again, at the end of the day, our goal is to help co-parents communicate in a way that keeps stress levels as low as possible, but also keep people accountable so that you don't have that back and forth, he said, she said, and stress of having to go back through and unbury through 3,000 emails or text messages or
Right.
bank statements or whatever it is to make sure that you're getting done what needs to be done with your child. And the
Hmm.
more that you can keep stress levels low, and the more you can kind of keep things as neutral as possible, the better person you're going to be. Your stress levels are going to be lower. You're going to be in a much better state of mind. And that means your children are going to be in a much calmer household on both sides of the thing. They're like sponges, right? They know when we come home from work and have had a bad day or something's irritating us. And we don't need to add that stress that you're having with that communication with their parent who they still very
Right.
much love and want to have a relationship and don't want to be put in the middle of things. So it's really
Hmm.
just kind of drawing that line and again, putting that boundary and enabling and empowering co-parents to take more control over when they respond, how they respond. And again, all in the name
Yeah.
of being focused on the kids. That's really what it comes down to on our side.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all need a little help facilitating that, right? Like
Mhm.
when we are, in the beginning, like I think Tessa, you said, like, you know, I think Tessa and I both come to this from having like probably screwed it up a lot, in the early phases. Well, we didn't have these sorts of, I tell myself all the time with the things that I messed up. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not proud of that, but let my mistakes be, lessons for you guys.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, but a platform that is helping with those guardrails and boundaries from the jump, I think is, God, I'm always telling everyone, please just use it. Just use it. I believe everyone should start out being parallel parents. And if you can
Mhm.
grow into co-parents, fucking fabulous. But the way to do that emotional separation is to start out separated because we get into our old patterns so quickly and so easily, right? So, which were, the top 10 mistakes I made in the beginning were all around that. So we're talking about boundaries, right? I mean, everything that I teach, everything I do is about setting healthy boundaries. Um, and I think Tessa, you too, you talk about how you went from like super high conflict, uh, $300,000 divorce to now your ex is bringing you iced coffees at pickup. So
Yep. Yep.
explain that, and you attribute that to boundaries, right? To the boundaries that you set, and
It
and being
is. It
not
yes.
about right, not about what you said to make him see and understand, but who you became
Mhm.
Right.
that made
Right.
him see and understand.
Ultimately,
Mhm.
there's no magic wand that's going to force your co-parent to become a different person. And so, in the meantime, while you're working all that out, it might take 8 years. It did for me.
Yep.
Um, you showing up as the consistent, um, level-headed, um, with very, very strong boundaries, co-parent.
Yeah.
And it's really hard in the very beginning, because again, we're not fully detached from that relationship yet. And in that relationship, as a way to survive, you may have just, been the default, okay, I'll let you do whatever you want so that I don't have to bear the brunt of it.
Yep.
But then after you're divorced, you still you're are I was tending to try to avoid setting boundaries because I knew that that's what would elicit a negative response. And instead of that, I went full blown, okay, we're doing this. Oh, we're in family court. I'm spending $300,000. Okay, well then I'm going to set these boundaries. And one of these boundaries is, using a co-parenting app to communicate. And I tell people in the very beginning is the best time to set the boundaries. And as
Oh,
long
yeah.
as you hold that boundary, it can never go away, right? You can stick to your parenting plan. You can only use a co-parenting app. And you can hold those boundaries because they are very healthy boundaries to have throughout the duration of your co-parenting relationship. So if
Yeah.
you can set them in the very beginning and stick to them and not fall back into those patterns, because it is hard holding a boundary for the first time.
Mhm.
And it feels uncomfortable and it feels like you're doing something wrong,
And it's
because you're
scary.
not used to that. It's so scary. Yeah.
It's
But then
scary.
you,
And you've had legitimate experience of how they react when you
right.
set boundaries, when you have boundaries, and it's usually not very
Right.
good if it's a high conflict situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's legitimately scary. Yeah.
It is. And that's why it is so important that you're using all the tools that are available, right? Not
Mhm.
just a Talking Parents app, but maybe hire a divorce coach, or take an online course so that you're being guided through the process and you're being validated when you do set a boundary, right?
Yeah.
And or you have someone who's guiding you, telling you, oh, this is a difference between a boundary and a rule, or this is a
Yes.
situation where maybe it does benefit the children, if you are flexible with this boundary, right? I
Right.
created a whole framework because my clients kept coming to me like, well, do I hold a boundary here or am I supposed to be flexible? And it was just like, okay, well, let's create a framework around that. And it's my boundary setting decision tree, which allows you to look at it from all these different angles and make the best decision. And I
Yeah.
teach that in the workshop that's coming up for Talking Parents. That's another thing
It's
that I love
great.
about Talking Parents is it's not just a tool to use.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
constantly providing resources for parents, and hiring experts like me to teach workshops on not just how to effectively communicate with your co-parent. I'm going to teach you how to responsibly and effectively use AI in your co-parenting
Oh,
conversations.
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Why wouldn't you?
Right. Use
Um,
it for good. If it's gonna be around,
right,
like use it for
right.
good.
Right. But
Absolutely.
there's so many things that you don't, like I said, they don't hand you a manual. Like, oh, you're getting a divorce. Here you go. Here's the manual. So
Hmm.
then, Talking Parents brings in people like me, and I'm teaching things like how to use AI in your co-parenting communications, how to effectively navigate, when your children are getting electronic devices, and how to share that between two homes, and how to keep your
Hmm.
children safe online. And then, my co-parenting decision tree, boundary decision tree, or I've got the kind method that I came up with. It's a keep your conversations short, provide the information only, keep them nice, and then determine the end of the conversation. So there's so many tools and so much, education that Talking Parents provides, in addition to their co-parenting app that I absolutely love.
I love it. I love it. Um, and Tessa, one more thing. You also have a children's book called Stella's Two Homes that
I
helps
do.
kids navigate. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about
So
that?
this is Stella's
It's
Two Homes.
so pretty. I love the
Thank
artwork.
you.
So
Um,
pretty.
yeah, I wrote this book because when I was going through my divorce, I couldn't find a children's book that my children would actually want to read.
Mm,
They
hmm.
were very
Yep.
young. They were 10 months old and 2 years old.
Sure.
But I was finding these older books on divorce that
Hmm.
weren't relevant to our situation. Also, I found that you can't find a book about separation, right? There was lots of
Oh.
divorce books, but what if a child's parents were never married? So I wanted to make a
Mhm.
book that was fun
Mm.
to read. You could read it as a bedtime story, that was appropriate for parents that had never been married, and that also, would give you a good gauge on how your child was feeling about the divorce. So my book paints both homes as very beautiful, fantastical little
Mhm.
stories. Stella's a half mermaid, half fairy. So when she's with her mom, she's a fairy. And when she's with her dad, she's having adventures in the ocean with her dad. And
Mm.
it kind of brings in the importance of a child, how they're made up of both parents, and
Mhm.
how it's really
Yes.
important for them to have a positive experience at both homes. It shapes who they are. And at the end of my book, there's some really easy little questions for your child to answer for you to see how they're dealing with the divorce or separation.
Mm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
available on Amazon.
I love it.
And
I love
or
it.
there's a link to it on my website,
Mhm.
kindmamadivorcecoaching.com. There's a link to all my courses and my one-on-one coaching as well.
That's so great. That's so great. I love it. I love it. It's so pretty. I just
Mhm.
love
It
the
is.
artwork is so pretty. Yeah, it's really look at that. It's so
It's
cute. I like it.
modeled
I
after
love it a lot.
my daughter, but she's super duper embarrassed about it. Like, mom,
Of course she is. Oh my God, Mom, you turned me into a book. Wait till she's a
I did.
teenager. Forget it.
Right.
So all right. We've been talking a lot about for people who are in like very, very high conflict situations, like every message feels like you're walking into a minefield. Heather, how does talking parents help those parents protect themselves and their own sanity when, like we were saying, like setting a boundary really does feel like, oh my God, this is dangerous for me.
Yeah, I'm one of the biggest things about talking parents, and especially if you're in, very high conflict, if you're in a, domestic violence situation potentially, is
Hmm.
that, everything is recorded, all messages are time stamped, and then you don't even have to share your contact information with your co-parent in order to utilize the application. So they don't have to have your phone number, they don't have to have your email, they don't have to have any contact information in order for you to match and utilize the app together. And so, that's boundary number one in those
Yeah.
situations where someone might be blowing your phone up, over and over and over and over again on those kinds of things.
Hmm.
And again, then the accountability, the record there. If you are using and abusing this, service, it's there in black and white, cannot be debated, cannot be argued. Messages cannot be deleted or edited. All types of phones now, you can send a text message and then you can edit it. Same with Facebook Messenger or things along those lines. You cannot
Yeah.
do that in this service. So you can't go in and gaslight somebody and, oh, I never said that, or I never saw that, or,
Yeah.
change calendar, things on a shared Google calendar. And I never put that on there, or I always said it was Thursday at 3, not Tuesday at 2, those types of situations. So, first and foremost, all of that is in place to ensure that none of that manipulation can happen. Now, is that going to automatically make your co-parent turn into a nice person and not send you awful things?
Nope.
Absolutely not. They can still do that.
Hmm.
But the key is you can't control your co-parent, but you can control what you say and what you do. And you
Amen.
can choose to pull out of whatever that message is, the things that need to be responded to and the things that don't. We have a journal feature within the application as well. So you can go
Hmm.
in there and journal and create a response, sit on it for a little while if you want to before you send it.
Hmm.
Or it's a great place to put in tips and tricks, like Tessa's different methods that you can put in there. So when you do get to that situation and maybe Tessa's not available right away, you can go in and say, okay, this is this situation, and I have all of these tools or all of these different ways that I could respond. So it's
Yep.
kind of there and easy to access and move forward within that standpoint as well.
Hmm.
And so we want people to think about it as where you may be getting that incoming, hostility and issues, but this is a safe space for you to have control and to empower yourself and make those decisions based on what's going to be best for you at that time. We also recommend for people, if you know you're walking into a high conflict situation from the jump, you can have the courts actually dictate how the application is used. So your co-parent may only be able to send you messages or make phone calls to you during certain hours of the day, or they may only be able to, talk about these types of topics, almost provide this rules of engagement. And so we have seen lawyers and judges get very creative with how they work the talking parents application into the parenting plan. So depending on how loose or how tight you want those guidelines to be, they can do that. And then at
Mhm.
any point in time, they can get a record from the application and go in and make sure you're following those rules. So if there's
Mhm.
ever a question about, he keeps trying to send me messages all hours of the night and it's 50 at a time, or she tries to call me in the middle of the night, to cause issues or whatever it may be. That's the other great thing about the calling feature on the application too. You can turn it on and off. And so if you're
That's
only
great.
able to utilize and have to receive phone calls, say between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., during the day, you can turn that off as soon as it's 5:01 p.m. so that that person cannot infiltrate and come in and, cause issues or anything like that as well. And again, if you're turning that feature on and off, it's marked in the record, and things along those lines. And so I think like you both were talking about early on, establishing those communications and those boundaries early on is going to be very helpful in the future. As I mentioned earlier, in my case, we were amicable, everything was good, and then situations changed. And trying
Yeah,
to now establish boundaries or put them in place where things are just chaotic
that's
and
right.
blowing up left and right, it was a challenge. And it took us several years to get back to a point where things could be a little bit more amicable again. So even if the relationship is positive and is amicable at the beginning, you don't know what's going to happen over the course of 5, 10, 15, 18 years until you're not having to do that anymore. Financial situations can cause stress. New, spouses, step parents coming into the mix can cause stress. Wanting to move can cause stress. Wanting your child to go to a certain school versus another school, all of those things can really cause these blow ups. So again, it just goes back to early on figuring out what's going to work best for you and making sure that it is crystal clear in your
Yep.
parenting plan and in that custody agreement
Yes.
from the
Yep.
jump, because anything left with wiggle room can be taken advantage of.
I love the idea, I always say, I totally agree with you. I always say, like, make your parenting plan more detailed than less. You can
Mhm,
always ignore it if things are
mhm,
going well. If you both decide, I looked at my ex and I didn't need that. Like, we were very amicable when we first separated, and all the toxicity that was present in the marriage, which, and there was a lot, but fortunately he also was not the kind of person who was going to make my life a living hell on the other side. He was the kind of person who wanted to now be the greatest co-parent ever to exist, right? So like that was the benefit there. But um, I always say, like, make it as stringent as you need to in the beginning, and if you back off of it, great. But implementing things, you don't
mhm,
want to be going to court trying to implement things down the line. And I really like the idea that not only, because you see this all the time, like, not only mandating the use of a co-parenting app, but specifying how it is to be
mhm,
used is another layer that I think is really important. Because, and I think that people don't know that, like, oh my God, this man is going to be like blowing up this co-parenting app, like in like paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph. And, at all times of the day. Um, so it's really good to have that sort of like how this is to be used
mhm.
in the agreement as well. I really love that. So I'd love to hear from you guys before we wrap up about, like, where do you see this going? What is next for Talking Parents? What is, yeah, what are some things that you guys might have coming down the line?
Yeah, I mean, to Tessa's point, AI is such a strong and really wonderful tool when used in the right way. And so we do have a suite of AI-based features that are going to be coming down the pipe. But of course, we're going through extensive amounts of training and utilization with the experts and people
Yeah.
that know all of the communication methods and boundaries and different things like that, that we really need to ensure that anything that we're going to be having our co-parents utilize within the application, it's, appropriate and it's based off of proven professional science when it's coming through. And so working together with those professionals like Tessa to make sure that before we release anything like that, it's going to be iron tight. But I'm really, really excited with some of those AI tools that we have coming down the pipe. Yes, a lot of them have to do with communication and helping people to be able to better express themselves, but also handle situations and kind of work through that. But on the other side as well, we're looking to try to make things a little more efficient for
Mm,
people as well. So there's a
yeah.
lot of AI prompting and recommendations and things that are coming so that instead of to maybe having to like, I am having this conversation about, a calendar and now, I need to go into the calendar tool and put that event in there. We're trying to make that a little bit more seamless
Mm,
for utilization of other things just based off of your interactions within the app as well. So definitely
yeah.
efficiency, but also assistance with communication and things along those lines, as far as like a feature and all of that is concerned. And then
Cool.
just continuing to find ways to partner with experts and professionals out there to really help and give the support to our co-parents that they deserve.
Great. I love it. Tessa, what about you?
I just love that
Let's
I
calm
get
down.
to see like the app in action. And then also I
Mm-hmm.
get to hear from my clients who are using the app. They get to share with me like their favorite things. One of my clients just recently told me she didn't even know about the info library feature of the Talking Parents app. And she was like, my co-parent is, because they're recently separated. My co-parent is just constantly, whenever he has the kids, he's asking me what size shoes do they wear? What kind of spaghetti sauce? She's like, you know, I'm out on a date at 7 p.m. on a Friday, and he's asking me how to make the noodles and butter that my daughter wants. And so I told her about the info library, and she's like, I put everything in there. She said
Yeah.
their pediatrician's name and number, their shoe sizes, the type of spaghetti sauce they get from Trader Joe's, literally everything, so that I can just put my phone down and not worry about it if I'm out on a date or if I'm just, having a good time with my girlfriends on my kid-free weekend. I don't have to keep on going back to the switching between, oh, I'm on mom duty. Oh, no, I'm just trying to detach from my relationship and move on.
Right. Yes.
So
Yes.
it's really awesome to be able to see the app in action and then interact with my clients who are using Talking Parents and see what they're using it for
Yeah.
and how
I
it's
think that's
working for
great.
them.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Tessa and Heather, thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing to make co-parenting less chaotic and more human, just a little bit easier. And for listeners who want to learn more, visit talkingparents.com. You can download the app, explore all the resources, and see how it might bring a little more peace and structure to your co-parenting relationship. And remember that structure and accountability aren't about control, they're about freedom, the freedom to focus on your kids, your healing, and your own peace of mind. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.